What happened, man? Why leave football? You could have had a great career playing for Real Madrid or something.
I realised that all the girls watch rugby, not football. So Zinzan Brook, Robin Brook, Gore Fitzpatrick, all those guys, that they installed that essence into us at the Blues. I do think a lot of professional sportsmen probably don't value the true relationship that you do have with your coaches. Once I was sort of confident who I am, what I wanted to be, what sort of dad I wanted to be, what sort of partner I wanted to be, I think things become a lot clearer, and that's when you reach into that bucket of rugby knowledge. You know what? I'm going to set a goal here. I'm not going to university. I'm going to be an All Black. I was there for my team. I was there for the country, and I did my part. I think the sports world is so beautiful in so many ways, but then so dangerous in other ways, because it does put us in a bubble. You know, people like that leading the All Blacks with a group of us, that's where the power came from. Every now and then, I'm sure on the field, I said, man, he is the media manager of Dan Carter. I was like, mate, I'm just a cricket buddy. That's all I am. So, quite simply, just be a good human being. Let's have some fun.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. I'm joined today with my co-host Ben Pegna, and today's guest, he didn't touch a rugby ball until he was 16 years old. 3 years later, he was wearing the black jersey, not just playing, but becoming one of the most iconic locks in All Black history. He played in 3 World Cups, won one, captained the Blues, won titles with Toulon and the Crusaders, shared the field with some of the greatest ever to play the game. But what makes this conversation special isn't just the career, it's the raw honesty about setbacks, leadership, vulnerability, fatherhood, and life after rugby. From Eden Park to entrepreneurship, from locker room to boardroom, this is Ali Williams, and these are his lessons from the game. Ali, brother, good to see you.
How are we, team? Shit, what an intro, Chief.
ChatGPT, brother.
I might call it quits on that, but I don't think you can get better than that. You didn't tell them how big the boardroom is because it's still pretty small. You didn't tell them where I sat in the locker because it was pretty dark. But no, thanks for that, and great to be on as a guest, and let's have some fun.
Oh, man, looking forward to this one, man. Only difference is this time I actually have some water here to drink, so I'm keeping it PG. And you at work. So, no, Ali, thanks for taking time to join us today on the Lessons from the Game podcast. Super excited about this. And, man, just want to say massive respect, not just for you as a rugby player, but just also as a human being. And really looking forward to today's chat. We're going to get right stuck into it. You started playing rugby at the age of 16. You were allegedly, this amazing footballer. Clearly not a striker, but maybe you were because you had an amazing cross kick ages ago where Doug Howlett scored. But starting playing rugby at the age of 16. What happened, man? Why leave football? You could have had a great career playing for Real Madrid or something.
Yeah, that would have been nice, but I'm more a PSG fan, so I would have tried to end up there. But look, my parents were, one's English and one's Scottish, so they're sort of first generation Kiwi, and we weren't embedded into rugby. The old man played a little bit of it, but it wasn't in our blood, so to speak. So I just love football, just love playing it and love kicking around and all that sort of stuff. And then with respect, rugby really does take over. Well, back in the day, it really took over in New Zealand. It's a dominant sport for us. And, when you get to the age of 16, there's a thing in between your legs that starts creating its own brain and starts having its own vision for life. And I realized that all the girls watch rugby, not football. So I was like, mate, I need to change this. So, unfortunately, I'd like to say that that's a story, but that's actually the truth. And I literally started playing rugby because all the girls at school watched rugby and became quite good at it, really enjoyed it. And I think, it's the people in the game that really make it. And I think it's the personal challenges that you can see yourself, but also the challenges that you can see yourself within a group, and nothing's really, I suppose, nothing's really off limits with rugby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a human, anyone can play it and anyone can get involved with it. So yeah, it is a beautiful game, that's for sure, and very grateful for what it did and what it gave me. But as I always said, it's only sort of the first chapter of my life, if you know what I mean, or childhood. Then very lucky to have a sports career, and then now it's the parenthood and the business world, and having some fun.
Today's Lessons from the Game episode was possible thanks to the support of Harris Begley Financial Planning, headed up by former Blackheath player Matt Begley. They are the experts to speak to for tailored advice on investments, mortgages, insurance, and pensions, helping you plan for a future of financial security. So when you think money, think Harris Begley, and head to www.harrisbegley.co.uk. Approver Quilter Financial Services Limited and Quilter Mortgage Planning Limited, March 2025. I just want to start off this episode like we always do. We always ask our guests, what is the one lesson from the game that you have learned which you can share to young and aspiring rugby players and coaches that are listening to this podcast?
I think one of the things, and you only sort of go off what your gut is and what you believe the success was. And it's probably two things. Like at the end of the day, only you know what you've done. So when I talk about that, when I talk about preparation, when I talk about recovery from injury, or I talk about being involved with sponsors, whether it's and bettering yourself, only you know deep down what you've done. And then on the surface, you can show a whole different view. So to me, it's really just be honest and be who you are about your preparation. And sometimes you won't get it right. Sometimes you will get it right. But if you can be vulnerable around that side of things, then people can help. And it's not a facade. Like at the end of the day, we can't be good at everything. And we can struggle at some elements, and we can be bloody good at other things. So really focus and be really good at those things that you're good at, but also reach out for help with the things that you're not good. So in a weird way, that probably wasn't one or two lessons. There was a whole concoction of lessons, but I think it's more around probably the power of the head. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Around what you can do and being honest with how you prepare and how you train and how you play and the person that you are. So, I just think through the sporting world and through the rugby lens, the head is so powerful. And that's what I tell my sons and my daughters, just remember how powerful the head is when you put it to its test.
Oh, great. I think there's some valuable lessons there, Alia. But what I would like to chat about is, you started playing at a young age, and obviously you shared your intrinsic motivation with us, and that was clear. But it's not that easy just to make that switch at that age, changing sports. Obviously, you clearly had a natural talent for making our lives hell as All Black, but that's another story. But it wasn't by chance. Let's be honest. To in a short span of 3 years to then become an All Black. I mean, maybe yes, you need some talent. Maybe you need a bit of luck, but there might have been something else that played a role.
Yeah, I definitely think you need a little bit of luck. I mean, with that, like Robin Brooke, Charlie Rickelman, were just about to retire when I just left school. So I was lucky there. I had a year at senior rugby and then literally straight into Auckland that year. And then on the back of that was the Blues. And at the end of that year was with the All Blacks. So, I was very lucky that those boys' time had finished. So I had the chance. I also think, and I think a lot of modern sports people miss this, but it's a connection with your coach, connection with coaches from a personal level. I've got people like Wayne Pivac, Pat Lamb, Graham Henry, Steve Hadson, Wayne Smith, Robbie Deans, all people that I could pick up a phone right now and ring and say hello. All people that trusted me, gave me a chance. And it was purely probably because I was who I was. I didn't shy away from putting a coach there and me here. I was, look, at the end of the day, we're all human. I understand what your catchment points are, and I understand what mine are. I just want to play the game. But I know that you select me. So how does that game work? So I do think a lot of professional sportsmen probably don't value the true relationship that you do have with your coaches. And some you can cold hard just don't get on with, but you've still got to have a working relationship. And as I got older, I got better at that. Younger, I probably wasn't as good as I probably should have been, but that's in a nutshell, the people that I was lucky to have in my career is probably what I attribute a lot of my success to. And then I think simply for me, there was a little bit of talent there, but I also think it's just that hard work ethic and that fact. Just keep pushing, knowing that, stupid little mentality things like, okay, I'll go training on Christmas Day. Why? Because I thought in my head, no one else to train on Christmas Day, so I'll train on Christmas Day and then I'll be ahead of everyone. Well, that was dumb because everyone trains on Christmas Day if you're a half-decent athlete. But, it's little things like that, and little things like always touch the line and repeated shuttle. Why? Well, because if you don't touch it, then you're going to take a shortcut when it comes to taking that extra step to try and tackle G on the rampage. You know what I mean? Like, just little things like that. I put little quirky little things in my head that just pushed me through those niggly time. You learn and you just keep evolving as you get older. I mean, the lessons that watch you and I play against each other the first time. I mean, we were both shit, to be honest, and we had a smile on our face. Watch us towards the end. We were probably both shit, to be honest, but we still had a smile on our face. And somewhere in the middle, it's probably some quality rugby against each other. But, I don't think there was one game that we didn't enjoy each other's company after it or before it or had mutual respect. And I think that's the beauty of rugby and enjoying it for what it is.
Oh man, clearly Victor must have been a massive inspiration for you, Victor Matfield, because he just shared a story on the pod about training on Christmas Day. So I'm glad his wisdom rubbed off on you.
I don't know if he was an inspiration. He was a bloody good competitor and a bloody good mate of mine, but I definitely didn't look up to him. I wanted him to look up to me. So, like as I said, like I got a lot of respect for you boys. As a whole and as a nation, as a people, as a group of people that, put adversity to one side, got on with it and gave it like literally everything. I don't think there was a brain cell that Buc-ee's didn't use on a rugby field. He definitely used every bit of his arms, bodies, legs, and whole big muscly carcass to waste up. But off it, we just had such great mutual respect, and even though keeping in touch with them, I don't mind a late night phone call when I've had a few, and the Northern Hemisphere boys cop it from me. But they always answer the phone, so it's a little bit of fun. Yeah,
that's awesome. Ollie, you talked about the line and training on Christmas Day and things like that. Was that also the standards within the Blues? And when you got there, was that just the expectation as well? Or was it the environment that allowed you to blossom like that, or was that within you already?
Look, I think it was in me already. You know what I mean? I think you naturally have that instinct, but I do think then you go into professional environments, and that's the difference between great teams and just teams is. Almost without being said, that you got to be there. Some come naturally, some it doesn't come naturally. But if I look at the first Blues of 2000 or 98, 99, 2000, they were championship winning teams with Zinzan Brooke, Robin Brooke, Shaw Fitzpatrick, all those guys that they installed that essence into us at the Blues, and then it was sort of our obligations to carry it on. So I mean, look, I remember my first season, I started training, and Carlos Spencer just looked at me and said, "Mate, what are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm raw meat, muscle, and power, boy." And at my first All Black test, I was 95 kgs. He made me. He literally said, "You need to do bench press after every training." And I could barely lift 80 kgs on the bench press in my first professional season, and slowly got to 93 by the end of my career. So, incremental gains, mate. That's all we're looking for. The power of the mind, and I think that's the big one when you transition into the real world, outside our little sporting bubble, is what is the power of the mind? Like at 35 to 40, you're asking your head to be in another space, to offer everything you've got to a space that you don't know, which is the work environment. But you've got so much up there. You've just got to learn to put it out into the real world and show them that, what does hitting the line mean in the workforce? It doesn't mean going for runs every day. What it means is you're meticulous at what you're doing. You're on time. You create energy. You don't take no. If you're a salesperson, if you're a builder, you're pushing your guys to get to a certain timeline. You're encouraging people to celebrate success. You're encouraging people to walk towards the failures and say, well, we failed. Like, let's be honest about it. We failed. We didn't get what we wanted to get to, but does that make us bad, or does that stop this whole business? No, let's keep going. And I think that's the real value of that transition between sport and the workforce. I mean, I was very lucky. Right at the end of my career, I was in London at a pub. It was the first time I've ever been to a pub outside of being with G. And a guy that you guys know well will be Justin Harrison rang me, and Justin and I had some bloody good battles on the field, and he rang me, and he just finished. He's still in France. He said, "Mate, you want to catch up for a beer?" I said, "With respect, mate, this is the last phone call I ever expected is you and me wanting to knock each other's blocks off and now having a beer. But mate, I'm keen as." So we had a beer, and one of the things he said to me, and it still sticks in my head, daily, is you've got to remember the length of your career and the position that you were like a CEO in a big business. So don't walk into the business world and not think that you're a CEO or have those qualities and attributes. And it takes someone you respect to say something like that for you to then go, actually, maybe he's right. And then that's what you deploy, right? And it doesn't mean you have to know everything, but it means that you have to act and evolve like a CEO and look for the opportunities, not look for the problems. So yeah, no, there's still a lot of failures I did as the budding CEO by myself, and now work with other teams, and you eventually find your space, right? Like currently at the moment, I'm in the property game as my main avenue, and I've got a little team, me and a mate, real little team, but it's the same thing. It gives me the same buzz as the game of rugby does, just in different ways, and it's just a lot of fun. And your skill set. I need him, and he needs me, I hope, to really push ahead. So yeah, it's fun.
So Ali, you open that can of worms. I'm gonna jump ahead a bit here, Ben. We often talk about locker room to boardroom, and you've just mentioned a few key fundamentals. You've spoken about the work ethic, the power of the mind, and the team setup and everything. I think we all experience it differently. That transition, you can have a lot of things in place. You can have some savings put away. Everybody experiences it different. So number one, how did you honestly find that transition? All right. I know we caught up a while back and say, "Oh, gee, I'm all good." You're always good, man, if you've got to be in the end. But honestly, how did you experience that transition? And how did the skills that you learned in the game help you now to start your own business?
Yeah. Look, I think if anyone tells you that they didn't struggle during a period of 2 years after the game, I think they're genuinely not telling the truth. and all of us have varying struggles from, actually, I've got to put, food on the table. So I've actually got to get a job, or actually who's around me patting my back, or who's around me pushing me, or where am I getting my sense of achievement from? So I genuinely say it took me 2 years. I did a few jobs in between that time. I had a pretty abrupt ending to my rugby career. In terms of, I stopped, and then I had a year just sort of floating around doing a few things, and then went back and played for racing, and got myself in the wrong position at the wrong time, and finished my contract quite quickly. But that then made me go, right, what is it I enjoy? What is it I want to do? But you have to keep finding, like, we're people of what's the word, sort of more visual learners and more doer learners. So I had to go through the process of being a sales rep. Do I like that? No. Do I want to go and buy a business? Okay, let's look at heaps of businesses. Oh, do I want to run 10, 15, 20, 30 staff? How big do I want to get? Do I want to be a 9 to 5 type of guy and sort of clock in, clock out? No. What is my goal? Is my goal the next 2 years, or is my goal in 15 years? Like, where is all that sort of stuff? And I think it takes genuinely 2 years to figure out who you are, your skill sets, all that sort of stuff. And so, I did struggle. Then, the other thing is, like, obviously family, and let's be brutally honest here. It's not easy for your partner when you're in the game, but there's a real glamorous side, but then there's also a real ratchet side. And once you come out of that, is where is the partnership, and where does this sit, and does it actually work, or does it not work? And unfortunately with mine, it didn't work. And, we went our separate ways, and now I've got a partner, a wife that is just incredible. Helps me in every element of it, from being a better dad to pushing me to putting an arm around me. And I think that's where you find that true partnership in the people next to you. And, I can say that, I wouldn't be here without her and her guidance and things like that. And then you have the kids. What sort of dad do you want to be? Do you want to be an absent dad and not give it all, or do you want to give it everything? And I think in that 2 years, that's that true vulnerability that a lot of sports people go through and figure it out. And then, mine definitely took that time. And then once I was sort of confident who I am, what I wanted to be, what sort of dad I wanted to be, what sort of partner I wanted to be, I think things become a lot clearer. And that's when you reach into that bucket of rugby knowledge in a different way. The other one's sort of like a grit, let's get through it. And then you come through the other side and you're like, right, what is it? What are the skill sets that I've got that really can transition into the sports, into the business world, and as you say, into the boardroom. It's, and they're all there. They're all there, and what I have is not what other people have. So, and I just didn't want to coach. The reason I didn't want to coach was I couldn't think of anything worse than coaching someone like myself, or you, for instance. and so I was blatantly honest with myself and said, mate, this is not a path I want to go down. So I didn't explore it where I think a lot of other people explore it, because they have that that natural draw for people to help them in the coaching thing. I do love people, and I love seeing people succeed, but it wasn't in a fact of on a rugby field. So I'm very, very lucky now. I'm part of a pretty cool ownership group that started a football team here in New Zealand. So I'm getting my sports fix. I'm getting my fix on, not so much on the field, but on that other side, and that energy that you can create in a stadium, that power of connecting with sponsors, the power of really being a genuine sports team that supports your fans and truly honors your fans. And I think I truly learnt fandom in a different way from the All Blacks and South Africa's, because the fandom, and I know this is a bit close to home, but the fandom that the All Blacks got in South Africa with the colours was very, very, very special and very unique. So you put that fandom, you put New Zealand fandom, and then you put your French rugby
That's why
fandom.
we didn't play in Cape Town for a very long time.
I know, brother. We loved it. We
It was
absolutely
a home
loved it.
game for you guys.
There's a lot of banana skins during the week, that's for sure. But the trip over, but the support we got in Cape Town was just incredible. And then and that's where I'm really lucky. So truly focusing on that fandom from my experiences around the world.
Ali, do your kids play soccer, football?
Yeah, my oldest son, he plays football. My girls play football. My youngest he's a bit of a brute, and he's playing football and rugby. So he plays football on one day and rugby on another day. And I think if I could be, one of the most amazing things my parents did is they didn't force me into anything. They sort of just let my passion to do things do it, and they just sort of became enablers rather than steerers. And that's what I really want to do with my kids is enable them. The girls are really getting into horse riding. Well, as we all know, lads, something with 4 legs and it's bigger than you is a scary sight, mate. So I'm just completely leaving it up to them and mum. But seeing the growth that these girls get out of horse riding is massive. So it's nurturing that and enabling that.
When you talk about that with enabling, and what was it like for you then? Because you went from not playing to becoming an All Black in a really short space of time. When was the penny dropping moment you thought, actually, I could become an All Black now? I'm on this journey, or did it just take you all by surprise? And how did it go from there?
My first year in rugby, I was in the first 15, and once again, lucky, there wasn't someone in that position, and I could learn. I was lucky. I had a great coach in Daryl Williams, who actually played in France for a long time, Samoan international, and he just said to me, he said, "Mate, you're quite good at this." And I was like, "Man, I just love it. This is so awesome, just running into people, tackling them." And I just said, "That's just epic." And then the line out, I just had so much intrigue and being lifted up and how it all worked and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose towards the end of that first season, with high school and the crowds that we got at schoolboy rugby, I was like, you know what? I'm going to set a goal here. I'm not going to university. I'm going to be an All Black. And my headmaster at the time, John Taylor, great human being, wrote on my school report in closing, said, "Mate, best of luck with your dreams of being an All Black. I believe you can be one." And I sort of said it real early, you know what I mean? In that first year, I just said, "Mate, I'm going to be All Black." And, I sort of devoted myself to it in a really weird way. And I said, very, very lucky that a lot of things came up.
Did you just pinch us? 2005, a few years later, you're playing against the Lions. Was that suddenly, did you sort of think, how did this come about so quickly? And, suddenly you're ripping it up and,
Yeah, I mean, my first test was in England. And I had my grandparents there. I had my auntie there, and my grandma and my auntie held up a sign saying Ali Williams for the All Blacks from Scotland. And that sign was held up in front of the Queen because the seats they got allocated were just in front of the royal box, and they held the sign up. And seeing that sign and doing the national anthem, I was just sort of like, wow, this is incredible, and it all just sort of came so quickly for me. And the respect I got after the game, Martin Johnson came in the change room, took off his jersey and just said, "Here you go, kid, you could be quite good." And I've got that jersey hanging up in my room with my first test jersey. And everything's just sort of, in a really lucky way, it just sort of unfolded for me to then go, you know what? There's no point being just an All Black, is there? You want to try and be a great All Black. And, hand on heart, there's a lot of things that I probably would have done different in terms of, recovery, injuries. I got a lot of injuries, unfortunately. And I think, I don't think I probably reached my true potential in terms of consistency and that sort of stuff. But I had a lot of fun on the way. So, I think it's times that you just fully embrace it. So, yeah, it just sort of happened, and you have a natural energy for life, I think, and that's what gets you to those places.
Ali, just want to jump in here, man. It's unbelievable listening to that. I can definitely resonate. I remember I was 16 years old when I realized, okay, I can potentially go all the way. And I think there's a difference to everybody listening. Everybody sets goals, but if you firstly, one, believe that you can make it, you have the talent, you have the abilities, and you back it up with work ethic and the grind, anything is possible. And I think that's important because we all have different trajectories in life. There's a lot of youngsters. We see professional rugby players, and a lot of professional rugby players, when they're off contract, they're unemployed. The numbers are increasing. The game is evolving. But the main question I have for you is that you spoke about it now. You would have done things differently in terms of recovery and injuries. So I always say I don't have regrets. I made mistakes. The mistakes I made in the past has helped me later in life. Now in my life after rugby, those mistakes that I made has allowed me to grow. But if you have to look back there, and let's just create the scenario as from an educational point of view for our younger listeners, is there anything that you would have done differently? Or was there a massive setback that you experienced that really helped you later in life?
I don't know if it was one thing. I think with me, it was just a range of little things and little people that keep steering me in the right path. My biggest challenge, and probably still to this day, and where the mistakes I get is, I want everyone to be happy, and I want to have fun with things. And I think sometimes we get so that, I'm quite energetic, and, sometimes at 3 a.m. you should go home early. And I think if I had controlled myself a little bit more there, then you wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, you could have been a better person the next day, and the recovery side would have helped. You would have focused a bit more on Monday rather than just sweating it out. You would have been getting ahead. But then you say you made a lot of mistakes. I did make a lot of mistakes. And at 19, when you're in the public eye of New Zealand, you grow up in front of everyone. And, I can pretty comfortably say that there's probably not many people in New Zealand that don't know one of my stuff-ups. But then again, that also helps you, I think, because you're not afraid to admit that you do things wrong, because people know you've done things wrong. So you can walk towards the honesty of true life a lot easier. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's one thing that really turned me. Yes.
But what was there really, let's maybe be more specific here. Is there a moment in your career where it was, man, you mentioned you got a lot of people steering in the right direction, people are helping you, but is there one thing, like, it was extremely hard? I always talk about my injury in 2005. I was out for 2 years. I picked up 20 kgs. I was binge eating and doing a lot of, you don't pick up 20 kgs by accident, man, So, and that was extremely tough for me. There were times, my routine would be lying in bed watching Friends and ordering a pizza from Mr. Delivery, and looking back at it now, I potentially was in a state of depression. I'm no doctor or anything like that. But was there a dark time that you can share with us? What, this was tough, and this is how I got out of it.
Yeah, I think there's 2 dark times. One was quite short-lived and needed to happen, and that was in 2004, coming back from the World Cup. 2003, new coach for Auckland, a guy by the name of Graham Henry. Auckland versus Canterbury, bloody big game, one of the biggest games. And he said to me, he wasn't actually even the coach at the time, he was the assistant coach, and he said to me, look, you're not going to start this weekend. We'll put you on the bench. We've got another guy wanting to start, and he's better. And I was like, oh, mate, you can't do that. Like, I'm going up against Chris Jack. I've got to blah, 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 blah. This is my time to shine, these sorts of things. This is the moments that I love. He goes, nah. And you know what? I truly don't think you should have been an All Black as early as you were. And I was like, mate, I played 15 odd tests. You can't just say I shouldn't have been one. And he said you shouldn't have been one. And, I don't think you're there. But one of those moments you're like, you can't take those away from me. They're my jersey. But then if you actually stop, breathe, and go, what is he trying to say? And he's actually saying, mate, you're getting ahead of yourself. Yes, you should have been there, but are you really doing the due service to the jersey? Are you doing the due service to the Auckland jersey, the Blues jersey? Are you truly being the rugby player that you could be? And take a look. And I mean, that moment made me go, sheepers, he is right. You can lose it like that. So there was that moment, which was a mental, young buck, keep going. And then I was the same as you, G. I went through a period of 2 years where I didn't play. I snapped my Achilles 3 times. I was just in a dark place from would I ever actually be able to walk again? Not so much play again, but would I be able to walk again? And then, as I say, play again. I hadn't won a World Cup. I've been to the two in 03 and 07, and we got one coming in 011. I was in some pretty decent form. And bang, 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 snaps. And I think those are those times where you go, well, rugby is an element of your life, but it's not the whole life. It's not your whole life. So how do you get out of those things? And that's when you anchor on friends, family, find your internal discipline. I wasn't hoovering into pizzas like you were, G. I was far too vain for that sort of shit. So I have to take my shirt off and still be happy with myself. I just couldn't live my life again like that. Mind you, I'm struggling now. I've got to admit, it's not as easy to keep it off, keep those. But, you do have those moments. You do have those moments in life. You do have those moments like now, with business decisions and things like that. You've got to grind them out. But there is always an end. You know what I mean? Like there's always a path out, not an end as in it finishes, but there's a path out. There is always a way out of something. It may not be the one you want to take, but there is opportunities at the end of every tunnel with that door's shut. I strongly believe in that, and things do happen for a reason. And so that's really, it taught me, keep pushing. Things will come. It might not look how you wanted. For instance, coming off the bench in the World Cup final, that's bullshit. That was not my dream. That was not how it was meant to. I was going to start and finish and be the hero. But I was there for my team. I was there for the country, and I did my part, and that was my role. And that was, for me now, there's a lot of beauty in that. But it wasn't my dream. Hell, mate, I was going to be the hero. But that's how it worked. That's how life works. But now, you chuck anything at me now, and I'm like, well, mate, I was in a moon boot for 18 months. You know what I mean? It's these things are minor. So. Yeah, I do think it's the adversity that rugby teaches you. Yeah.
But just there, maybe to give insight. Sorry, Ben, I just want to just one last question before I hand over to you. I think a lot of people don't really understand what we go through as rugby players. You just mentioned there now you on the bench. In my case, in the 2007 World Cup, I didn't play in the final. I was there in the World Cup, and I was devastated. And, looking back to my journey, I started all the test matches before the World Cup. But then I have to ask, did I give enough positive pictures to the coach to reassure him that, okay, I should have played? I have to be honest with myself. And looking back at it now, I can actually say, you know what? And I'm due to catch up with Jake White, by the way. I'm about to have a chat with him. He needs to explain, not to explain. I just want to learn, being a coach myself. But in that moment, when you realized you were going to be on the bench, how did that feel? Because people just think they see us, we're living the high life, we're always in the public eye. At the end of the day, we're human beings too. How did it feel in that moment when you were told, you know what, you're going to be on the bench?
Yeah, I think before I probably answer that, I'd also say that in the world we live in, we're all about this little screen here. And how do I look in this screen? And not for myself, but how do I look to the world? And we all sit there and we're going, blah, 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 they look so good. But respect the fact that everyone is going through their stuff, whether it's positive or whether it's negative or whether they're in a real battle or they're not. You have to respect the fact that everyone is going through it and everyone will go through stuff and everyone will have positives and negatives and stuff like that. And I think as sportsmen, we go, oh, it's just about us, you know what I mean? We're in the public eye and people don't really know how I truly feel and what's truly going on to me and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yes, mate, but hold on, get out of your flipping bubble. What about the guy trying to catch the bus who actually has to make it because if he misses it, he doesn't work those 8 hours and he loses it and then his kids don't get, do you know what I mean? So I think the sports world is so beautiful in so many ways, but then so dangerous in other ways because it does put us in a bubble. And to me, I think the world needs to understand that, yes, we look good in these screens at times, but let's all respect everyone and what they're going through and their challenges. And then I think when I got dropped, to me, I think it comes back to, as I said, those relationships. So your Wednesday evening, and you get a phone call from Graham Henry, come to his room. And I'm like, buddy, I know what this is, mate. Don't even tell her to come to your room. Just flip and text it to me. But anyway, that's his nature. Went to his room. Hey, Ali, how are you? I said, mate, I'm great. I really want to be here. And he's like, well, would you like a glass of wine? I was like, you're going to do it this way, are you? And we all knew the answer. We knew what was going to happen. But, we sat down, had a glass of wine. He talked to me and he said, look, mate, I think you're really, really, really good player. I think I could pick any three of you, Brad, Thorne, or Sam. But you know what? You're just so good off the bench. And I was like, yeah, I'm off the bench. I'm good, mate. I'm just good. And he goes, so I'm going to put you on the bench. I was like, don't do that bullshit. He's like, no, you've been off the bench than Sam and Brad are. I was like, hold on. I'm just as good on the field as well. He goes, no, this is better for the team. And I'm like, he's crippling me for being better off the bench than starting. But the reality is, it's what's better for the team. So for me at that time, I was gutted. I could be truthfully honest with Graham. That was one of the beauties of the things we had. I said, you're making the wrong decision. I was quite animated and quite angry with him. Have another sip of wine, mate. And I was like, oh. And then I think 5 or 6 minutes into it, we pushed through and, it's about the team, not you and all that sort of stuff. And that's ultimately what you've got to look at. The world is not just solely about you. The world is about everyone and all coming together. And, that's when, he just touched in, this is your part. So I think so where I'm probably trying to get to is we all have bad times. We all have good times. We all have those times where you'd feel like the world's on top of you, but accept them, walk towards them, and then push forward. And it's the ones that we ourselves to is the one that really stops our progression. So keep pushing forward, even when you go through those dark times, because quite quickly the sun can come up and you can be in a whole different space if you've got a positive mindset.
100%.
Yeah.
Ollie, earlier you mentioned about becoming a great All Black and not just an All Black, and that reminded me of Richie McCaw, the stuff that I've read about him and that he's spoken about, and I think he wrote that in his journal. Can you talk to us about that?
I don't honestly read books about Richie, do you? Seriously. People read books about the legend, which is obviously inside the All Blacks. They read books about Richie
Legacy, yeah, the legend.
With your book coming out.
You tell us the truth, man. Come on.
Mate, he was pretty uncoordinated, to be honest with you. I mean, he really struggled at catching and passing it at the best of times. But man, put him on a rugby field, he never dropped anything, and he always passed sort of half decent, but it wasn't a glamorous pass, that's for sure. But it got to the right place. I joke about those two, but they're two of my close mates from rugby, and I look at it, and I look at Richie, not the most talented person in the world, which everyone can't understand. My gosh, he worked, and the power of his head was absolutely incredible. The power of his mindset, the ability for him not to give up, the ability for him to constantly say to himself, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better. And Dan, just a consummate professional, and but had this perception of this glorified superhero, but take his cape off, and he is just salt of the earth human being, and he valued friendships, he valued all those things, but they could just transform when required. So, people like that leading the All Blacks with a group of us, that's where the power came from. You know what I mean? That's truly where the power came from.
And when that sort of, again, people have talked about it, whether that cultural shift with the All Blacks after a period of time. I think when Wayne Smith came and he was going to walk away, and then he came back, and you guys sort of turned that corner then before 2011. How much of it was about just harnessing guys like the guys you just mentioned and all the leaders, because you had a spine of, guys that got 100 caps, but how much of it was just bringing everybody together, and what was that like? What were the key things for you?
I think the reality behind that sort of stuff is, what is the purpose of doing it? And I think if you come all the way back, and this is where Wayne Smith is just, the legend, take all the coaching stuff away from him, put the personal side to him, is, why do we do things? So what's your draw to being a rugby player? Why, what do you want to be as an All Black? And I don't care if it's about making money, wearing the black jersey and everyone knowing you. That's what Wayne Smith, be the best at it. Be the best at it. And if that's your purpose, then drive towards that purpose. And this is where that conversion comes to, outside of rugby, is that purpose in life. What is it? What truly is your purpose in life? You can't just say, to be a great human being, or to be a great dad. Your purpose is constantly moving and stuff like that. But the reality is you're always having a purpose. And I think that's where that change for the All Blacks came, because the purpose focused around, one, being good human beings, and then two, was trying to be the best we could possibly be individually, and the byproduct was collectively we would all be the best we could possibly be, and that came from the baggage man all the way up to the head coach. So if you have a head coach that is constantly, or a coaching group that is constantly looking at getting better, man, that's going to challenge you like no tomorrow. It's going to challenge them like no tomorrow, and your style of play evolves and all that sort of stuff. And that's, I think, the beauty and the beast of the All Blacks.
That's awesome. Gee, what were you going to say? Were you going to jump in then?
Nah, I just
He was going to tell me about his love affair for Jägermeister.
Sorry?
Is that right? You're tell me your love affair for Jägermeister. Outside
medicine. Cough medicine. Cough medicine. That's another story.
You boys had some run-ins.
So
we did have some run-ins. We had them on field and off field. You know what I mean? G would on the field he would put an arm out to sort of floor me, but off the field he would put an arm out to really comfort me. And sometimes I think it was like a wing, so that we could fly together, in unison. Or sometimes it was like, you guide me or I'll guide you.
Oh, man. But, talking on that now, you actually stuffed up my question there. But, we spoke about this when we got on our call about more than a month ago, that mutual respect, man, I remembered legends, of the game, like Jerry Collins. I remember the camaraderie we had, that we would have a good go at us in the field, and even playing against leaders. So I think what a lot of people don't get is, back in the day when I started playing, South African teams were getting hammered, And you talked about the power of the mind, eventually overcame that. A lot of people give South Africans grief for the nutrition supplements, but then again, in New Zealand, we don't know what's happening there. You guys were kind of tough at some stage. Somewhere, things balance out. But that I used to love that. My favorite part of playing rugby on the weekend, yes, there was the game, but was that connection afterwards in the locker room, whether it was for the ABs or playing against the Blues or playing against the Crusaders, just that pure connection, having a band. Even in the game, you get smoked. The guy's like, good hit, G. Or like, I just remember the bottom of the ruck. I'd see that ugly face of yours and you would just be chirping away. I was like, I just hope Buc-ee can shut this guy up. He doesn't stop. But I think that's maybe something in the game. The rugby's different today. I don't think there's that same connection. I could be wrong. What is your point of view on that in terms of, is that camaraderie still there amongst opposition teams? Is it like everybody just doing their own thing at the moment?
Yeah, I think, my view on this is outside of sport. I think the world is different. I think people are different, and not because they ultimately want to be, but because the nature of the world we live in, the connection is not as genuine, because we're all through our phones and our devices. We're all trying to portray something that potentially we're not. The reason, my sort of experience is around social media. I got off social media, and I noticed just a mindset change. I didn't connect with people for when they said to me, "Oh, you did this or you did that," because I didn't know. So I only knew what was here in front of me. And I think if we look at a sportsman now, they don't have that genuine connection with their opposition because they're viewing them through a perception rather than an actual reality. And commercialism has come in so quick. So, the 45 minutes to an hour to 2 hours or 3 hours, we even stood in the changing room getting to know each other after a game, to then saying, well, okay, let's meet up after the game that first time, and then having a few beers with each other to getting into town on the Monday night and texting you and saying, "Bud, are you around for a beer on Wednesday?" For them to go and play against each other. The environment's not there for them to do that. Whether they're different individually, I'm not too sure, but I know they're living in a different world. Would I prefer the world that we lived in or the current world? I definitely prefer the world that we lived in. And I think I can honestly say that one of the most powerful elements of sport is the people you meet and the lessons you learn from them. And, to this day, having the ability to call you up and say, "Hey, pal, blah, blah, blah," just chewing the fat, that's the real power of a sporting career. So, but they've got benefits in other ways, and there's probably a lot of things that us old boys are saying, "Oh, it's so different, blah, blah, blah," but these guys have got a lot of benefits. So you constantly look at yourself and saying, what world are we living in, and what person do I want to be? Do I want to be one that, no, it's not the same, or do I want to be right? Yeah. It's different. I'm going to embrace both sides, and I'd prefer to be the one that embraces both sides. So, sport is just, at the end of the day, sport is just a beautiful thing, and the people that play sport is the beautiful thing. Not to say that there's the odd dickhead that floats around in sport, the odd dickhead that floats around in everything. So you just accept that and move forward. And, I probably wouldn't want to put myself in the dickhead category, but every now and then I'm sure on the field, someone said, "Man, he's a dickhead." And but
we didn't used to have blown up photos of you in our locker room at all. Not at all. We weren't throwing any darts at all at you. So don't stress about that. But listen, I just want to, just quick thing. I know Ben has got a few more questions before we wrap it up. So many things we can deep dive into. And I just want to ask you this. You were definitely jack of all trades, master of some, after your career. And I would like to know, was there a process in order applying to becoming the media advisor to Dan Carter at Racing Metro? If you can take us through that process and, what skill set did you need or had to acquire in order to get an opportunity?
it's one of those unique positions that actually become created by, I don't even know who created it, but it was sort of quite weird because when he was coming over, I was like, mate, blah, blah, blah. And then I met the president, and the president's like, you want to play? And I was like, I don't want to play, blah, 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 Toulon, and I want to chuck it in. And he's like, come on, well, let's have an association. And I was like, it's okay. And I really got on with the president, and he's like, come on, just wear the blazer, the jacket. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden they said, like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I don't really know. And then I think someone, the French, they glorify things, right? He is the media manager of Dan Carter. I was like, mate, I'm just a king buddy. That's all I am. So, but no, I mean, it's just our connection. I mean, look, ended up playing that year, right? The following year, I ended up playing with them at racing. So, we see each other once, I'd say almost once a week or every second week, so he's better at golf than me, but that's no great feat either, right? So, yeah.
Ollie, how was that time in Toulon? With the, if suddenly you find yourself playing with the likes of Buc-ee's and you winning a lot of things as well. What was that like for you?
I think it was a kind of pivotal moment for me around the brain again. The All Black way. We talk about the All Black way. We talk about how we do things. We talk about New Zealand number 8 wire. We talk about this New Zealand, blah, blah, blah. Going there and realizing that there's a different way to play rugby. There's a different outlook on rugby. There's a different outlook on life. All these sorts of things made you think, whoa, there's a whole world out here that we have sort of been quite isolated to. So for me, it was just a fantastic time to learn different things, and some examples, we talk about examples with Dan, when the pressure really came on, Dan slowed down, communicated, and enabled us all to try and get us out of the situation, right? When the pressure came on Johnny, close down, give me the ball, I'll get us out of it. And I was just like, wow, like just so polar opposites, but both incredible sportsmen and incredible at their role. Buc-ee's, like I thought Buc-ee's would have been the biggest rugby head the world had ever seen, like eat, sleep and drink a rugby ball. Hey, that guy, he could switch off so quickly. It wasn't even funny. Like it'd be 2 minutes before training and he's still sitting there watching his animals and being a big farmer and all this, or sitting with his legs crossed, having a cup of tea, talking about all sorts of stuff. And then bang, on the rugby field, he was all go. And the fact that I got to meet the real Buc-ee's. So, because when you played Buc-ee, he had the third person. So when he was on the rugby player, he wasn't Buc-ee's, he was someone else. And then, so all the incidents was someone else. And then off the rugby field, he was Buc-ee. So I got to actually really meet Buc-ee's being the player. And then meeting Brian Habana, like we'd known each other for a while, but then actually connecting with his family and his drive and becoming best mates with his GoPro, knowing that he would always take a picture and all that sort of shit. So Toulon for me was that catalyst, or that celebration of a sporting career, that I met so many great people and had the opportunity to play with, to win championships, and we were very lucky there. But also to get to know them off the field in a lot deeper way. Like, I talk about Danny Rousseau and Juan Smith and Hollywood. It's just a beautiful thing. It was just incredible. Even Australians, mate, I got to know my two good buddies, and Drew Mitchell and Git. It was just like, look at you two clowns. But mate, we became great mates and still talk, and I just want to see them do so well and watching everyone do so well. So it was sort of like the icing on the cake to a really cool career.
That's awesome. Do you think that opened your mind up as well to the transition afterwards? Did that help you, do you think, with that?
100% knew that the bubble's going to pop. There's a lot of different people out there. The business world is a mass mix of so many different types of people and ethics and work ethics and cultural elements, all that sort of stuff. And you've got to absorb them all to be the best that you can be and still be strong on who you are. But absorb, respect, acknowledge, walk towards learning new things. And if you do that, then man, the world's just a beautiful place to honestly, quite simply, just be a good human being. And the byproduct of being a good human being is, success, whether it's financially, time, freedom, relationships, kids, all that sort of stuff. So, that's life is simple, boys. We just try and complicate it a lot.
About people, isn't it? About people and relationships, and Gee, what were you going to say, bro?
And we're getting further away from it, right?
Yeah.
With technology and things like that. So how do we actually, accept and walk towards technology, but then also how do we actually walk towards that human interaction and that conglomeration or that connection of humans getting together to truly change things and for the better, right? Not for the worse.
Yeah. I totally agree with the technology part. I shared with Ben, it was about 2 weeks ago. I did what they call a media deprivation challenge. And I wasn't allowed to read, no social media, no podcasts, nothing. It's one of my toughest weeks ever. It was like when I was eating my kg of chicken wings and I was here alone in my flat, I was like, what do I do now? These chicken wings are damn good, man, nice and spicy, but like, what do I do? But it made me, after that week, it made me value, the human interaction so much more, those chats. And it's so important because the phone, we spoke about this, or I spoke about it with Dr. Cheryl Calder. We're all reaching for phones, even as coaches. We're taking a break. We go on a phone, check our WhatsApps, check our social media, all those type of things. So I think it's so important that we actually find a way to reconnect and keep that conversation going, which is important. But Ben, he has an important meeting to get to. So I want to let you close out with our last question, our last quick fire question.
Yeah, thanks for your time. It's been so good. We'd love to know, what's your one lesson that you've taken from the game that you use in your everyday life now and outside the game?
Oh, I don't know if it's a lesson. I think it's just where do you call it, a mantra? All these powerful words, to me, is just words. Mate, to me, I just want to live every day to the fullest. Even if it's a shit day, live it to the fullest, absorb it, go for it. Celebrate the success, work on the misfortunes and all that sort of stuff, but live life to the fullest is probably the big thing for me. Wake up happy, get into it, have fun in what you do, and be a good bugger.
That's good. Thanks, Ali. We're running out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, we could have gone. Unfortunately, he's now a CEO. He's a CEO now, so he's got to get back to business. He's got to work for his money.
We needed his insight on the line.
What's that?
Oh no, mate. I was joking. We needed your insight on the Lions and all these other things. But also, I caught up with Sam Tuitupu earlier, and Sammy's a good mate. And he said to me, make sure you ask him, did he ever challenge to get to the back of the bus when he was in Auckland? So he said, make sure you.
Oh, yeah, this man got beat the shit out of fucking hell. Yeah. There's a few of us, though, mate. It was no easy feat. It wasn't as if I was Tarzan. I mean, I walked back like Jane, but mate, there was about 8 of us thought we could take them on, and we just got absolute poleaxed. So, no, I mean, Sammy's a great human being, right? Yeah. Absolute brilliant. Texts me on the weekend, hey, bro, got any tickets to the football? I was like, mate, you just won? I said, actually, I got 10 for you, because I know you've got family everywhere. The whole Tongan mafia want to. So, just a person like that. What a great human being. Sammy Tuitupu.
Yeah,
in a huddle. We're in a huddle with Auckland. In a huddle. Broke the huddle, deceivingly. Walked around behind Graham Henry and downtrod him.
Yeah.
Like, he's mad, mate. He's absolutely mad. But you know what? One person that people respected was him. And Graham Henry will still to this day say, I respect that guy so much, because he just gave it everything. So, yeah. Hey, boys, I really enjoyed that. Hopefully you got something out of it, and I definitely do. connecting with you. G.
No,
So
thanks. It was great to
Good
chat
being-
with you, Ali.
yeah, it was
No, I really appreciate
Cheers,
it.
Ali.
Thanks, man.